Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sit Down with Sanderson. I am delighted to be joined by someone who has been gracing the media world and an MMA journalist, an MMA legend who has been doing his thing for over 4 decades. Is currently a nominee for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And you'd have heard him, you'd have seen him at UFC interviews and UFC press conferences. I'm delighted to be joined by the one, the only, Kevin Ioli. Sit back, relax. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Please do smash that like button if you're new, subscribe, and also subscribe to Kevin Iole's YouTube channel as well. Firstly, Kevin, such an honor, such a privilege to be able to do this interview. Thank you so much for doing this. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
No, absolute pleasure. You are truly a legend, a pioneer in what you do, and you continue to do great things year on year. So firstly, congratulations on your nomination, and congratulations on all the fantastic work you do as well. I want to start off with UFC 311, the event that happened previously, which was headlined by Makhachev and Renato Moicano. Merab had a fantastic performance as well. You've been one of the people that's really been pushing Dana White over the last couple of years to say, look, Islam's that guy. Why are we not, putting him at the top and putting him on a pedestal? Dana came out after the event and said, look, he is pound for pound number one now. How big of that recognition from the boss is that for Islam Makhachev, and how big that could that be for his career going forward, in your opinion?
Well, I think whenever you're widely recognized as the best fighter in the world, that takes you to another level in terms of your recognition, your star power, your potential money-making ability, right? Because everybody wants to see the best, whatever sport we're talking about, whether it's basketball, Michael Jordan, boxing and Sugar Ray Robinson, you notice I didn't say Floyd Mayweather, and whatnot. People love to see the best perform. And, that has been John Jones's domain pretty much for, a decade and a half, right? And now the fact that, most people think that Islam has surpassed John, I think that's big for his career.
Completely agree. And you look at the performance that Islam put out, and I think it kind of goes under the radar. Renato Moicano is on a fighting win streak at the moment, and Islam wasn't preparing for Moicano, but he goes in there and within one round he dispatches him. We look at some of the conversations online at the moment. Is he the lightweight GOAT? He's the winningest champion at lightweight at the moment. Do you think he's done enough so far to surpass the likes of Khabib and BJ Penn at 155 as being the king of that division of all time?
I have an easier time calling him the lightweight GOAT than I do calling him pound for pound number one. Oh. So, my argument with Dana last summer was not against John Jones. It was against the fact that John was in the middle of this streak that was over a year for not having fought. And so I said, you cannot rank a guy pound for pound number one if he hasn't fought in over a year. And so, I said, when John comes back in November, when he fights Stipe Miocic, I will consider how he looks in that fight, and I will consider his other fights, and I'll make a decision whether I think he's number one still or whether Makhachev has passed him. But for the time being, until Jones fights, the active fighters are the ones that are ranked, and I had Islam Makhachev number one. Now, people have said, well, Stipe Miocic was an easy opponent, and he was 40-some years old. But I watched that fight, and I thought, John Jones looked damn good in that fight. And I said, how do I not rank him number one? And so I put him number one. So he went back to number one for me. Now, this week was just an incredible and so difficult decision, because now I look at it and I say they're roughly the same. Islam, I think, is 27-1. John is 28-1. We know John, his loss would not be a loss now. It would, it was a legal strike. You have all that goes back and forth. I ultimately ended up going with Islam by about that much. And the reason that I did, when I looked at it, I said, John's best wins were when he first won the title. Shogun, who Lyoto Machida, Rampage Jackson, Vitor Belfort. Islam's best wins are his more recent wins. And so I say John Jones is the greatest fighter of all time across all divisions, and I have no hesitation in saying that. I think John Jones is the GOAT. But when we're talking about pound for pound best in the world today, I think Islam is just a little bit hotter, and given that, I just put him slightly ahead of John Jones.
Completely fair assessment, and I'm intrigued to see what happens next with Islam Makhachev, because he is putting down a real marker at the moment at 155, and obviously he's expressed desires to fight 170. So we'll watch this space. I do want to go into the co-main event though, because Merab going into the fight was a 3-1 underdog, and I'll put my hands up. I bought into it. I thought Umar's going to beat him. I didn't see how Merab's wrestling would overpower Nurmagomedov, considering the name and the legacy and the gym where he trains from, and his striking is very good as well. However, one thing I didn't anticipate is that Merab, his third lung would be activated, and he would just not stop, and he would look fresher as the fight goes on. We've all watched MMA for a long time. You are an expert in this field. Have you seen anyone, maybe outside of Cain Velasquez, with the sort of pressure and cardio that Merab has and the will he imposes on fighters?
We used to call him Cardio Cain, and then I was in Mexico City when he fought Fabricio Verdum, and he gassed out in the fight, right? Yeah. So, Cardio Cain lost because of his cardio. So I guess I would say I've never seen anybody like Merab. Like Merab is a really hard guy when you're making picks, because there's two distinct things. And I looked at the fight with Umar and I said, okay, who has the better striking? And I think Umar is the more fluid, better striker. Who has the better wrestling? I don't think there's any question that, as a technical wrestler, Umar has better wrestling than Merab has. But then you look at that pace and that cardio issue, and you say that overcomes so much. And I think when you think about it, whether you and I are just fighting as two dudes, in the gym and going, how often is it the person with the better cardio wins, right? Yeah. I can have better wrestling than you and better striking than you, but if I gas out a minute into the fight, I'm probably not going to beat you, right? Yeah. And I think, so Merab's fights present that conundrum. You look at it and you go, well, Sean O'Malley has better striking, and O'Malley's going to be able to create angles, and he's going to do all these things. He'll beat Merab. And then Merab pushes this insane pace. If you step back from the fight against Umar on Saturday, after 3 rounds, there's two things you notice. Number one, Umar's up. He was up 2-1. And if you stop the fight right there, Umar is the winner.
He's a champion.
But then what did you notice? And I was sitting next to John Morgan, and Umar walked to his corner, and we were in his corner, and I said, he is freaking gassed. Yeah. And Merab was just getting started, and that was the difference in the fight. You hear fighters use the phrase all the time, I'm going to take him into deep waters, and they usually don't do that. But that was the very definition of deep waters, going into the 4th and 5th round against a very fresh Merab, when you're Umar and you have a broken hand, but even more than that, you're out of gas tank.
Yeah. Completely agree. I was watching it on TV, and the thing that sticks out to me the most is not even the fight, it's the post-fight interviews. Merab is standing there, he's laughing and joking with Joe, he's speaking as though he's just gone for a walk in the park. Umar visibly was pretty much leaning against the cage and huffing and puffing, and this is about 5 to 10 minutes after the actual fight is finished. and Umar is in fantastic shape. So for Merab to do that to Umar just again speaks about how great Merab is, and again rightly being compared to some of the greats at bantamweight at the moment. But I do want to pivot slightly based on that. So currently, you look at some of the champions at the moment. You've got Pantoja, who in my opinion is he's pretty much wiped out 125, and there's no clear contender for him. Merab is currently the champion. He's beaten number 1, 2, 3 in his division. 4 and 5 are currently on losing streaks. You look at Topuria, 145 pounds, looks dominant, just beat 2 of the greatest featherweights of all time. Then you look at Makhachev, running through the 55-pound division. In my opinion, no one in that division beats him at the moment. Are we having to potentially move into a realm whereby we're going to have to make some super fights, not just because of the desire for super fights, but to actually allow some of these divisions to catch up and some of these contenders to actually stabilize themselves and say, look, I'm the established one, I get a title shot next? Do you think we have to start looking at fights like Pantoja versus Merab or Ilya versus Makhachev just to allow the others in the division to catch up?
You know, it's a good question, and it's a really good point. And I asked Dana a version of that same question at the press conference on Saturday. You know, I says, what do you do with Merab? Like, you look at the division, right? And as you mentioned, he's beaten 1, 2, and 3. And who is in there? Davison Figueiredo and Corey Sandhagen, you know, round out the top 5. You know, I mean, you know, it's very difficult to say, you know, who do you put him up against next? I think O'Malley is the guy, only because, you know, O'Malley is a former champion. He's a big draw. They'll make some money there. But I'm not against the super fights and then going for the 2 titles, but I think that you have to be ready for that, right? And I don't think that any of those champions, with the exception of maybe Pantoja, have done enough in their division yet. And so to me, it's kind of like when we were in the GSP era and he was just ragdolling everybody at welterweight, and he was, you know, putting up defense after defense after defense.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're in that situation. And so that's giving the opportunity to, you know, those 4 fighters in particular. And I would say the 2 that really, you know, would stand out there would be Makhachev and Topuria, in terms of, hey, they're going to go for all-time status, right? Now, Topuria's still got a ways to go, right? He's only 2 title fights in and everything. But we're looking at these guys with these unbelievable records, dominant victories. And I think you allow them to rack up some wins so that on paper, their resume looks, you know, really good. So when they're done, you say, hey, wow, look at these 4 gentlemen did during their careers. If, you know, I think if we were looking at a situation where, say, Ilya had made 4 or 5 defenses, and I would say Arman and Islam had made 6 or 7 defenses, then okay, I say let's do it. But you know, I don't think Ilya has done enough yet at 145, even though I think he has established himself as, it's kind of like Secretariat in the 1973 Belmont, that far ahead of the field, right?
Yeah.
And I think, we're going to have to see somebody really make a leap up. But what is happening across all sports, you see it. You know, when Tiger Woods first came out on the PGA Tour, you know, he was driving it farther than everybody. He was making more putts, and they caught up to him. You know, now, not that Tiger didn't end his career as the GOAT and the greatest of all time, but certainly, you know, Phil Mickelson and other guys caught up to Tiger, and the gap wasn't as big. And I think we'll see that here over the next couple of years. Somebody will emerge, whether it's, you know, Umar getting better, or somebody in some other division getting better, or somebody who we don't think of right now that comes up and, you know, reels off 4 or 5 wins, and they make themselves the contender, and we have a really big super fight at that point.
Completely hear what you're saying. I want to just go back. First, I do want to give a shout out to someone you mentioned called John Morgan. He was actually one of the first journalists who actually gave me the pleasure of interviewing him as well. Really great guy. So shout out to John Morgan. But I want to speak about you now. Over 4 decades covering combat sports, and just again going from strength to strength. I see the work ethic you put out on YouTube with the amount of interviews. You're at so many events, whether it be contender series, pay-per-views, etc. Where did your love for MMA start? And talk to me a little bit about your journey to being the Kevin Ioli of 2025.
Well, I was a kid, and there was a boxer that was not half bad that was on TV quite a bit. His name was Muhammad Ali, and I kind of, I thought he was halfway decent.
Heard of him.
And I liked him. And if you look on my walls here, I have all these pictures of Ali, and I have knickknacks back behind of Ali. I became a big Ali fan, and he made me into a combat sports fan. And I was fortunate. My dad boxed when he was in the Army. So he was a boxing fan. So I got to see in person. Now, I don't remember a thing of it because I was 5 or 6 years old. But Sugar Ray Robinson's final fight was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which was where I grew up. And I don't think it was known at the time that it was his final fight. He just retired after that. But we went to see that fight. So I can say that in person, I saw all the great welterweight champions. I saw Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, Wilfred Benitez, and then you go forward, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, and Bud Crawford, right? So I got to see all those guys. That's a long way of saying I had a great love for combat sports. And when the Fertittas bought the UFC, I lived in Las Vegas, and the Fertittas were huge there. And Lorenzo called me and said, "Hey, I'd like to see if you would be willing to cover this." And I had already started looking into MMA because I knew that the Nevada Athletic Commission was going to sanction it very soon. And so I said yes. And I had a lot of fun. And Dana told a great story when the Apex opened. He did a tour with Las Vegas media members. So there was about 10 of us, and we were touring the Apex. And then he told the story of the time, because I knew nothing about MMA when I started. Some people may say I still don't, but at that time,
they'd be lying if they said
it was like zero. And Dana and I were on the floor in his office at the first UFC headquarters, grappling on the floor. He was showing me different things like, this is this move, this is this move, and literally, and we were knocking books out of the bookcases and stuff like that. And Dana was telling that story because he was talking about, look at me now, because when he opened the door to his office at the Apex was massive, but in that little office, it was, I don't know how big it was, but that was what I got into MMA then. And once I got a basic understanding of it, I loved it. And it's grown over time. And so I thought, you know what, there's a big audience for this. And this was like 20 years ago. I said, there's a big audience for this. And I think that I'm going to, ride this wave. I can still do boxing because I still love boxing. And I'm just going to go with both sports. And it's been phenomenal. And to see the growth of the UFC and to see all the changes that have come in those years has just been amazing.
Truly has been, and you've been a massive spearhead behind that as well. You spoke about Dana White and the relationship, how far it goes back. Again, from the outside looking in, I've never been to cover a UFC event in person, but from the outside looking, I look at Dana White and he's very much no nonsense. He's very transparent, but he's also no nonsense. You are one of the few journalists and few people covering this sport, though, who actually push back and actually get the respect from him where he sits down and listens to you. Talk to me about this relationship you have with Dana White and why you think he does listen to you and why you think he has so much respect for you.
Well, I think there's two different things. We've known each other a long time. I knew Dana from before he was involved in MMA, right? So I would see him. There was a gym that's no longer open in Las Vegas called the Golden Gloves Gym. Mike Tyson used to train there, and so it was close to the newspaper I worked at the time. I would walk over to watch Tyson train, and I would see Dana in the gym. And we got to be friendly. I don't want to say that we were like the best friends or anything, but I would see him. It's like somebody you see all the time. What's up, bud? How you doing? Then I was working at a gym, working out at a gym, and Dana was teaching box aerobics there. And he had one of those little microphones that went on, the thing and all that. And so I would be going into the gym and I would see Dana and everything. And I just got to know him on a personal level. But I think, a lot of people say to me, well, why can you push back? And other people can't. I'm not sure that other people can't, but I think in my specific case, Dana knows that I will say what I think whether I agree with him or what I disagree with him, I'm going to give my opinion, and I don't have an agenda. I am not trying to screw him, nor am I trying to unfairly boost him. I am just trying to say what I think and represent the fans out there that love this sport, and give them an honest picture of what is going on. Some people disagree with my opinions. It's my opinion, right? And so as a result, I think he knows me well enough to know that I don't have some gotcha. And Dana's a little bit paranoid because he feels like a lot of the media want to do the gotcha thing. I'm not sure I agree with him on that. I mean, not that there isn't some people that are that way, but I think when you take the MMA media as a whole, or the sports media as a whole, I think that it's not nearly as big as he does, but that's how he views it. So I think that given the fact that he looks at me and he says, okay, I know if he agrees with me or disagrees with me, it's his fair and honest opinion. And it's my job to convince him that I'm right. And, and I always feel like as a journalist, you should be willing to change your opinion if the facts merit it. And I'll get, if I have a second, I can give you an example of that.
Sure.
I was in Chicago covering a UFC event. I think it might have been UFC 90. And there was a HBO boxing match on that weekend. HBO was big in the United States at the time. Chad Dawson was the light heavyweight champion, a really good fighter. I was going to write a column critical of Chad Dawson. And I had called Kerry Davis at HBO. So we kept missing each other. And now I'm getting at a point where my column has to get out. I'm facing a deadline. So I said to Kerry, I says, please, I'm going to have to write this column. And I pretty much had it written in my head. I knew what I was going to say. He says, give me a chance to talk to you. I'm in a meeting. When I get out of the meeting, I will talk to you. I talked to Kerry, and he told me some facts, and he told me a few things in response to questions that I had asked him. And I went from here to here. So I made a 180-degree change because I thought he was speaking facts and he was giving me information that I didn't know. So I changed my opinion. When I sat down to write, I was going to write an article critical of Chad Dawson. And I wrote an article, as it turned out, pro Chad Dawson, because of I listened to Kerry Davis. And I feel like on every story that I work on, some of us are, better than others at different times. That's what I try to do. I try to get the facts as best as I can understand them and then present them. And if I'm writing an opinion piece, and that's what I often do because I'm a columnist, I try to then give my take on the facts based on the column, on my opinion based on the facts and as I know them.
I think that's one of the reasons why people respect you so much, because we're living in an era right now where people are quick to, or wanting to get the news out first rather than wanting to verify whether the news they're getting out is actually true or not. And the fact that you're doing that, one, shows humility, but also just shows that you have you're carrying out a duty that you want to carry out for the good of the sport, not just for what's good for you. So I commend you on that, and it's one of the reasons why myself and so many others actually respect what you do and look up to what you do as well. Just want to speak about boxing. You speak about your love for boxing, and boxing's going through somewhat of a resurgence at the moment with some fantastic fights being made. You look at the UFC and the massive increase in popularity it's had, and then you look at boxing where it was maybe up here and it dipped and now it's coming back up again. Do you think that boxing is going to continue to climb, or do you think it's going to hit a peak, and then if it hits a peak, how does it get over that barrier again?
Well, I can tell not just by your accent that you're from a different country than I am, because you would not be saying that if you lived in this country, right?
Okay.
So, in the United States, boxing is as a low of an ebb as I can remember.
Okay.
And think about why, right? So, boxing has been going downhill for a while in the United States, and, promoters are going away, and and the big fights, almost all of them are now in time zones where they're on at crazy times in the United States. So when fights are, Las Vegas used to be known as the boxing capital of the world.
Yeah.
When there was a Riyadh season card in Riyadh, it starts at 8 a.m. in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it ends at 2 p.m. And it used to be years ago, there was a lot of boxing on Saturday afternoon. So if you were in the United States, you could see boxing on Saturday afternoon, no big deal. But now in the last, say, 30 or 40 years, it's become a Saturday night staple. People have things to do on Saturday afternoon, and they're not home, and they're not watching television, and they're not watching boxing. Yeah. And as a result, boxing is falling off the map in the United States. I try to say, a lot of times I write and I'll talk about how there's a lot of good things going on in boxing. You're referencing fights being made. Ben and Eubank just got made. That fight in the United States means zero, right? Yeah, unless you are a hardcore fan, nobody knows who those guys are, right? Yeah. And what a lot of the hardcore fans in both boxing and MMA forget is the hardest core fans are the smallest percentage of the audience.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, you say in Las Vegas, hey, Conor Benn is fighting Chris Eubank. Who? Right. Yeah. And they don't know who it is. And part of that is because of the decline of boxing in general, but part of it is because of now the fights are going and being put on at a time. And I think that's something that Turki Al-Sheikh has to consider. Does he want to make boxing a European, Asian sport, or does he want to make it a worldwide sport? And I mean, I give His Excellency a lot of credit because he's doing a lot of really good things to try to reinvigorate boxing. But it's a conundrum, and in this country, boxing is way below MMA, and there's reasons for that, and we can get into it. But I think that just in the general, the way boxing is promoted now in the United States, and the how accessible it is, which is not accessible at all, is difficult. You have to pay, what is it, $225 a year for DAZN. ESPN Plus is, another, I think it's $90 plus, they have pay-per-view fights that you have to pay. Yeah. It's not cheap, and it's not easy to find for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I can relate to what you're saying in a different way, but for MMA. So boxing's massive over here in the UK. I mean, I'm in London. I'm based in London. It's massive over here.
Right.
I've had the pleasure of being in boxing gyms, and I've been able to meet people like Roy Jones Jr., etc. And boxing is really booming. Obviously, you have Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, now Daniel Dubois, amongst others from past, such as Ricky Hatton. Over here in the UK, though, MMA is the growing market. And that, again, is because of, for us, whenever we watch a pay-per-view, it's 3 a.m. it starts in the morning, right, for the main card, 1 a.m. for the prelims. And I will cover the main card, and I sometimes won't get to bed till 7 a.m. in the morning. And it's tough. It really is tough. And I dedicate myself to it. Whereas if it's a casual fan, they might just think, I'm going to watch this in the morning. I might just watch the results. So it'd be interesting to see what does happen in boxing there, because as you said, Las Vegas was the mecca of boxing at one point, but now it seems that Riyadh season is starting to take over, and yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how things develop there. I just want to do a few housekeeping, guys. Please do smash that like button if you haven't already. The link to Kevin's channel is also in the title, so please go over there and make sure you subscribe to his channel as well. Kevin, I want to ask you some quick fire questions now before we round off. So I want you to answer these as quickly as possible with as little thought, just instincts. So, who is the best fighter you've watched live?
John Jones.
Thought you'd say that after your GOAT comment earlier. Who has given you your funniest answer to one of your questions at a press conference?
Oh my God, that quick off the top of my head. That's a tough one. I got a lot of funny response, but I would say Habib.
Okay. Can you remember what the response was?
We were just talking about Conor McGregor, and he was knocking Conor, and in some of his broken English comments about Conor.
Fairs. Your favorite retired fighter who you've interviewed in the past?
In any sport or in MMA?
MMA. We'll stick with MMA.
My favorite retired fighter that I've interviewed, Chuck Liddell.
Okay, very fun. The Iceman. Which fight that has been announced so far this year are you most looking forward to?
I think the fight right now that I'm most looking forward to is Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are. That is the fight of the fight at the moment. And finally, the best press conference you have attended in person.
Oh, I was going to say Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo in Dublin. That press conference
That was insane.
off the hook. But what was the press conference? It was the fight that Ben Askren fought Jorge Masvidal, and he got the 5-second knockout. So that was whatever that press conference was. That was a really funny press conference because there was a lot of stuff going on, and they were giving Dana crap. And also, I would say secondarily to that, the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor press conference when they in Los Angeles when Nate stepped in on short notice to take that fight when he was on the yacht and got off the yacht and came back and fought. I think it was Dos Anjos was supposed to be in that. That was a hilarious press conference.
Yeah, that was hilarious because that was Dana White wasn't even at that press conference.
Yeah, Dave Schaller ran that.
Yes, I remember. And Conor's wearing his vest, and I think he's wearing a granddad cap, and he's just tearing into Nate, and Nate's just like, "I'm gonna beat you, I'm gonna beat you," and he goes on to shock the world. Before we finish, firstly, again, thanks so much for your time, Kevin. Really have appreciated. If I could ask you 3 questions here. One thing you're grateful for, one achievement you're proud of, and one thing you'd like to accomplish in the future.
Well, one thing I'm grateful for is that I've been able to do this for over 40 years, right? This is my 44th year as 45th year as a full-time journalist. So just being able to do this, live my dream, never going to work in the morning. So that is what I'm grateful for. Second question.
Something you're proud of, an achievement you're proud of.
I was elected to the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, and that really meant a lot to me when you consider all the people that are in the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. And Nevada had such a big role in boxing, so to get elected to that was great for me.
Amazing. And one thing you'd like to accomplish in the future?
Get elected to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. That I was nominated, didn't make it this year, but my God, like I just, I cried when I was nominated. I don't care about awards. I don't enter writing contests. I don't care about any of that stuff. But, when I was nominated, I thought about my dad and how proud my dad would have been. And my dad was into awards and all that kind of stuff. And he used to brag about me to everybody, it must have driven his friends crazy. Right. And for me to say I'm in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, that would have been so crazy, and it would have made me think of my dad and just have that. And so as a result, I think that would have been the thing that I want in the future, just because I can say, Dad, I love you, and here it is. This is for you.
God willing, you achieve that. Kevin, once again, I'm a small channel, and you've taken the time out your day. You showed grace, and you've been really, really helpful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Anytime.
Learned a lot, and I'm sure the people watching this have as well. Please, everyone, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, go and support the stuff that Kevin's doing. Fantastic interviews all the time, getting great insight from the fighters. It's been another one with Sit Down with Sanderson. Thank you all for watching and listening. My name's Callum, the wonderful Kevin Ioli. Till we see you next time, take care, everyone.